Good evening, you're watching Just the News. I'm Amita Balachandra. We start off with our top story today. Massive protests erupted in several parts of India today against the remarks made by two former BJP spokespersons about Prophet Muhammad. Protests erupted in Delhi, parts of Uttar Pradesh, Bengal, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Jharkhand, among others. In Delhi, a large crowd protested outside the Jama Masjid after the Friday prayers. The protesters carried placards, shouted slogans. However, the Delhi police said that it lasted only for 10 to 15 minutes, but that legal action would be taken against protesters as they did not have permission. In the meantime, Delhi police has registered 2 FIRs against 31 people, including Ms. Sharma, for allegedly spreading hate and hurting religious sentiments. In the meantime, in Uttar Pradesh, protests broke out in Saharanpur, Moradabad, and Prayagraj and other cities. In UP's Prayagraj, there were instances of stone throwing and the police cracking down on protesters in one area. In Saharanpur, 21 people were arrested for taking part in unauthorized protests after Friday prayers. In Jharkhand's capital Ranchi, several policemen were injured while tackling the mob as well. And demonstrations were also taken out in Kolkata's Park Circus area, neighboring Howrah, near the Charminar in Hyderabad, Ludhiana, Ahmedabad, among other cities as well. In the meantime, in Jammu and Kashmir, curfew has been imposed and internet services have been suspended in major towns of Chenab Valley region in Jammu and Kashmir on Thursday after protests over controversial remarks made by two former BJP leaders. Now, the administration has imposed curfew in Bardhawa town yesterday following a series of protests in the town. Now, restrictions banning the assembly of 3 or more people have also been imposed in the Ramban district. Now, prohibitory orders under Section 144 of the CERPC were imposed in the rest of the Chenab Valley on Thursday. Moving on to COVID situation in the country, India has reported 7,584 new COVID cases in the last 24 hours. A maximum of those cases really come in from Maharashtra and Kerala. Maharashtra has reported 3,081 new COVID cases, half of which is from the city of Mumbai. 1,956 cases have been reported in Mumbai the last 24 hours. According to the Indian Express, WHO Chief Scientist Dr. Swaminathan has said, and I quote, the subvariants that are emerging are more transmissible than the original Omicron BA1, and there is a likelihood of waning immunity. It is a possibility that there could be mini waves every 4 to 6 months or so, and hence, apart from all COVID appropriate precautionary measures that need to be taken, it's important to also track the variant. End quote. In the meantime, China's commercial hub Shanghai will impose a lockdown again on millions of people this weekend for COVID testing. This comes just 10 days after the 2-month lockdown was lifted. Authorities have ordered PCR testing for all residents in 14 of Shanghai's 16 districts over the weekend. The center has now released the guidelines for prevention of misleading advertisements and endorsements for misleading advertisements 2022, which prohibits surrogate advertising. Now, it also prescribes conditions for commercials targeting children. Now, to give you a bit of a context, surrogate advertisement refers to an advertisement for goods or services whose advertising is otherwise prohibited or restricted by law. According to the guidelines, no surrogate advertisement or indirect advertisement shall be made for goods or services whose advertising is otherwise prohibited or restricted by law. On to business news right now. US-based credit rating agency Fitch lowered India's growth forecast for the current fiscal year to 7.8% from its previous estimate of 8.5% made in March. It said that the impact of inflation has reduced the projection. Now, this is the third time this year that the agency has revised its estimate in India's growth. On to environment news, an extremely important piece of information coming in from the Chhattisgarh. Amid mounting protests by tribals and environmentalists, the Chhattisgarh government has put on hold 3 mining projects on ground in the Hasdeo Aranya forest. Now, this comes days after State Minister and local MLA T.S. Singhdev visited the forest and protested against the projects, joining hands with the people there. The state government had in March given a go-ahead for coal mining in an area of 1,136 hectares under the second phase of the PEKB coal block. Now, to give you a context, Hasdeo Aranya is a biodiversity-rich forest, but it's also rich in coal. Now, tribals and environmentalists have, over the last couple of years, been protesting against mining there to save Hasdeo. That's the campaign's name. At least 2 studies have so far underlined the importance of biodiversity in the region that mining will impact. In fact, the Indian Council of Forestry Research and Education has said that the PEKB block is, and I quote, habitat to rare, endangered and threatened flora and fauna, end quote. On to news coming in from across the globe right now. Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has created 2 new ministries to deal with the severe economic crisis in the country. The role of the new Ministry of Technology and Investment Promotion will also be to promote foreign direct investment and private sector investment while promoting economic potential in Sri Lanka. Also, a Ministry of Women, Child Affairs and Social Empowerment was created through a Gazette notification issued by the President. In the meantime, China's defense minister has warned his US counterpart that China will, and I quote, not hesitate to start a war if Taiwan declares independence, end quote. Now, the defense minister has said, and I quote, if anyone dares to split Taiwan from China, the Chinese army will definitely not hesitate to start a war no matter the cost, end quote. Now, Taiwan, a self-ruled democratic island, lives under the constant threat of invasion by China. And one piece of good news before we wrap things up here on this bulletin, India may have just found a real-life Ironman in 34-year-old Shreyas Osur. Now, he swam 3.8 kilometers, cycled 180 kilometers and ran 42.2 kilometers to successfully become the first Indian Railways officer to compete in Ironman triathlon held in Germany's Hamburg on Sunday. Now, it came with a lot of preparation, he says, in several reports that he completed the championship in the single-day sports event in 13 hours, 23 minutes and 36 seconds. That brings us to the end of this bulletin. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.